Hi there, Frontline Church family and friends. Today we are in 1 Corinthians 7 verse 25 through to 40, the end of the chapter. Now this whole chapter, chapter 7, Paul is teaching on marriage, sex, singleness, celibacy, virginity, being engaged. And what he's saying is that marriage is a gift from God and celibacy, singleness, is a gift from God. They're the options, and both of those ways of living are gifts to us. Indeed, Paul says that he lives as a single man, and Jesus, we know, the most fruitful, joyful human that ever walked this planet, lived a celibate lifestyle. And I think that for me, chapter 7 is an important chapter because it really helps us understand this idea of apostolic authority. And we don't talk about it a lot, but it's really important for anyone involved in leadership to understand the idea of apostolic authority. When we think about questions like how do we work out how to live as a community together? How do we live as Christians? How do we, what do we do with those tricky bits of scripture where some people say it means one thing and others think it means another thing? How do we come to a sense of unity around those things? And what we're seeing here is Paul as the apostolic appointed leader, as a community, giving direction, giving guidance, speaking into that. We saw a similar thing in Acts where the Gentiles came to faith, and so the apostles, the leadership, met together to work out what of the Old Testament rules these Gentile believers would have to follow or not. That's apostolic authority. And in this passage, Paul, there's some interesting language. Paul talks about the concessions that he makes, verse 6. He talked about the Lord's commands, verse 10. He talks about rules that he personally lays down in his communities, verse 18. Verse 25, today we read about Paul's judgments. Paul is making judgment calls based on what he understands of Scripture. And he's basing those judgments on the context that they're in, the crisis that they're facing. So this is a passage that helps us understand how we interpret Scripture best in community together under authority. That is very different from the radical individualism that says no one tells me how I live, it's just me and what I think, or even the Christian version, it's just me and Jesus doing our own thing together. Now today we see the church in Corinth is facing some sort of crisis. We don't really know what that is. We assume it's to do with persecution. Paul talks about the time being short. The word time is the word kairos. It's an opportune moment, a season. There's this window of opportunity for them. And Paul frames it very much in a sense of the Lord is returning. It's about the signs of the times. The Lord is coming back soon. And that shapes how we live and live in relationship. There's that tricky bit, verse 29 to 31. And I do not think for one moment Paul is saying a husband should neglect his wife. I don't think that's the case at all. I think what he's saying is we should prioritise mission in the context of the days in which we are living. I think he's saying don't make family, don't make stuff an idol. And I think that we can look in the past and see where actually people have got this wrong. They've gone off on mission or done something for God, and in the process have neglected family and had a damaging impact on their family in the name of ministry. And I think what is a real gift of this movement that we are part of is that we talk about family on mission. So in the past it used to be family or mission, and then for many years and decades we tried to juggle family and mission, often having a negative impact on family or a hindrance in the mission. But as a movement we talk about family on mission together. So to use the language of this passage, how can I and my wife Kirsten, my boys, how can we prioritise the Lord's affairs as a family together? How can we live with undivided attention and devotion to Jesus as a family together? How can we outwork the mission through our family, through our home, into our community. And I suppose what I'm saying there is an example of apostolic authority. That's how we interpret as a community what Paul is saying in this passage. As a church, we do family on mission. I think in all of this chapter and our reading around marriage, divorce, singleness, celibacy, virginity, engagement, I think what we can say with confidence is this: God is deeply concerned about how his people live in right relationship with one another in community. That our identity is not primarily, my identity is not primarily that I'm a husband or a father. Our identity is not primarily how we define ourselves sexually. Our identity, first and foremost, is as sons and daughters of the King and living out that kingdom calling. Have a great day doing that today.